It's been an amazing day, and I guess our speakers were asking about the questions right from the start. We will go through all the questions right from the start. There are questions for each one of you, and we will start with Karti. Karti, this question is from Tanvi, and the question is she is asking, should we make decisions and choices considering the present conditions more or the future one? Okay, I see Karti is not here. We only have Nitya. So, Nitya, question to you. Is being a generalist considered a disadvantage over being a specialist?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes, so very interesting, the talk about generalist and specialist. To have a simple answer, I would say no, it's not considered a disadvantage. But at the same time, I think it's a lot more about what your career path is and where you fit in. So it's important to understand this thing, whether you're a generalist or a specialist, in the environment in which your career, your job is in. As I mentioned before, many of the startup teams or product teams in corporates, the best teams are the ones in which there's a balance of different kind of people. You always need someone in a group who knows something really well, who will be able to make a decision. You need someone who is a catalyst, who will sort of put things together.
So, did we lose Nitya's connection? I guess we will move on to the next question. To Shivrina. Shivrina, this question is from Bhavani. She is asking, with communities, you always get a lot of help, advice, and support. But how do you streamline them into a decision?
Yeah. Hi, Swati. Yeah, feel free to join in here as well. I think you and I both have experience firsthand on getting help from the community. I think I'll just briefly give you certain things which are just on top of my head on how you can evaluate some of these help and support that you get. For me, I think the first thing that works really well is discussing it with my co-founder. So when I say I discuss it with my co-founder, I basically mean that if since the beginning we have identified these skills, which are complementary to each other. So we know what we are good at, what my co-founder is good at, and what we have tried to do is fill in the remaining gaps with like a kind of our investor or an advisor who can give us that perspective in making any sort of a decision, right? So your help or the support or the advice that you'll be receiving is majorly around a problem that you want to solve. So you can present more of these like an A/B testing or just an idea that you want to take up and eventually discuss it out with your pool of experts, as you would call it, and then you can come to a decision around it. The second thing I think that has worked for us is to kind of understand that most of the time the advice you receive would be gyan. And there's nothing wrong in that, because the reason why it became a gyan is because you never asked the right questions. Okay.
Right.
Am I there? I see a white screen. Yeah, am I there? Yeah.
I can see you.
So yeah, you try to avoid in not making an advice or a help into a gyan by asking the right questions. So you need to know why you're out there for a support that you're seeking. Ask the right questions, and I think that in itself helps you streamline a lot of your decision making. And I think the last thing would be also to identify the source of the help. I know you would be out there in a lot of channels, and it's good. I mean, you cannot really make out in day one that what really helps you. But identifying the source or mapping the source to a relevant kind of a vertical. For example, if you want like a design help, you really don't go to like someone who's not an expertise in design and ask them and then eventually decide based on that. So you need to identify and map your kind of a source to how they are skilled and why it makes sense to look or listen to that kind of an advice and bring into your entire decision making process. I think these three should more or less help you out in your initial phases, and rest is, I think, your gut feeling and the way you have been testing out with your users.
Right. I think you were quite spot on with giving three solid points on how do you convert them into a decision, right? Ultimately, you will know you want to take this or not.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think this question is for myself from Bhavani. Should we pursue an idea if there are already enough people doing it? How to come up with your value proposition? Bhavani, that's an interesting question, really good question, and there are like lots of opinions and data points out there. My recent learnings is something that I've understood, which was very new to me. When you have competition, it's not really bad at all. It in fact validates that this is something that people might already probably they have this problem and they're looking out for these solutions. But one thing we need to be aware is the same frameworks that I would apply. PDF. Can you relate to the problem? Do you have an in-depth insight of what your users actually want? If we have both of these, and if we think we have a better edge, we can still go for it. I hope that answers. And there are other entrepreneurs also in the panel. So if you want to add anything, please feel free to add. Moving on to, yeah.
If I may add a couple of cents
Yes.
to that previous question.
Please.
So market validation is actually a hard thing. Market is very slow. As an entrepreneur, you're like really fast. You are on fire, right? So what happens when you have competition? They are actually doing the validation for you. So having a competition less space is actually very scary, which means that you have thought about something which nobody else thought was important. I mean, that's a scary place to be in. So I would kind of check out if my idea is already tried by somebody and if somebody is very, very successful with that idea, because that is when I know for sure that there is a market and there are some people willing to exchange value called as currency, and you are giving value. So there was this beautiful ad by I think by Daimler to BMW, or the other way around. So they said that it was so boring without you for the first 30 years. And now that there is 100 years of competition, it was so interesting. That's a beautiful way of saying and having your competitors as a benchmark, because you need level playing field and your competitors provide that. So if an idea is already done, great. That's where you should be. I mean, that's my 2 cents about it.
Actually, like to add on to that as well. I think, yes, it's a very scary place to be in if your idea does not have any competitors, right? It often means that the task or the responsibility of educating your customers on its value often falls on you, which takes you away from actually selling, right? Because you have a step ahead of what you need to do. So healthy competition is good, but again, it's not a straightforward answer. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and the answers tend to be, case to case basis. All right, I think I'll just take this question that is for me. So how to find the right partners for your startup? This is one of the universe's unanswered questions. Just like how hard it is to find a life partner, it is so hard to find a partner for your startup. I think more than that, more than just finding the right partner, it is on how you still keep that relationship alive. Right? How do you keep that right partner? So when you're going through the entrepreneurship journey along with a co-founder, it's not your journey, in fact, starts there, right? So try to answer questions like, are you doing enough to keep this sort of relationship on the basis of trust and honesty, right? Are you having conversations regularly? Are you talking about your company, your product? And do you guys have that sort of nice vibe? And if not, what could you do to make that happen, right? And it's completely fine even if it doesn't work out. There are a lot of people who do it by themselves as well. So I would say don't keep this stopping you from what you want to do.
So anybody else wants to add to Swati's?
I think let me just sorry, you changed it. Okay,
Then
let me just
fine.
add to what Swati was saying. Yes, I think there is no hard and fast rule on finding the right partner, but a couple of things which you should be keeping in mind is because right now everyone is in a phase where they want to try out things. I think startup has given everyone a taste of how lives can be if you want to try out and step into the process as it was earlier. Like earlier it was like maybe more like it's high risk, please don't go ahead and do it. You will get like so much of hesitation. I'm not saying you won't get it now, but at least you see some of these people coming forward. So among those folks, identifying the right person, I think it's more like you make a list of a kind of red flags, right? So most of the times, I think 90% of the time, people are nice. People would be having some sort of a skills to add on to, you would always not know everything. So you would always find the other person more interesting. You would find the person more insightful. And there are high chances that you would click off in the initial go, right? It makes sense to pull in like an engineer, a designer, a product guy. And, it makes sense. It completely makes sense as a team. But eventually I think you have to look for those red flags, and it has to be done as fast as possible. So some of these red flags are the way some of them would not be showing interest the way you do it, or share the passion the way you do it. So though it is not like a skill based kind of a red flag that you're looking at, but it's more like a soft kickoff base that you have to be on the same energy level, or else you'll just keep clashing with each other because your energies are not right. So I think that those are the things which you should always keep in mind. And most of the times, it's not like you cannot find the right partner. It's everywhere. You just need to find that how you are suiting with each other. In the end, you just have to be in harmony, because it's gonna be like a very kind of a tough journey. And I think I would be a bit against Swati saying that you should try it on your own. I really feel it is not something which you should to the maximum extent try it on your own, because it's really lonely and you really need a constant support system. So I feel that you should never let it go. You should always keep trying to find the right partner. I'm not saying you just meet the next person and say, yeah, you become my co-founder, but you have to constantly be in a lookout of it. And I think it's good to have like a good set of initial team to start with, and a set of kind of a complementary skill set and complementary energy levels to combine while doing or going through this journey.
Right. I'm sure there's like a bigger checklist, and this is like so critical
Yeah.
for the startup to become success. So we'll go back to Karti. Since we have you back, this question is from Tanvi. She is asking, should we make decisions and choices considering the present conditions or the future one?
Well, there is no future, right? In all reality, past is gone, the future is non-existent. You are actually making it through your present. So which means that we can only make choices with what we have, where we are right now. So maybe the choices that you are making now will result in a better future, but we cannot make a choice based on the future, because it's still in the making. It's like asking ourselves, should I really taste this biryani with raita or another curry? The biryani is not made yet, right? So that would be my view. So there's no future.
Oh, okay. According to Kathy, I think she has an interesting take on this one. We will move on to the next question, because we have lots of questions. If there are any discussions, we can keep it to the end. This is for Nitya. Nitya, this question, I think we've lost you when you were talking about the generalist. Did we again lose Nitya?
I think Nitya, you're on mute.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, so I think if you can please go ahead and answer it about generalist versus specialist.
Yes. So I don't know where I got cut off, but what I was saying is that directly to answer the question, I would say that no, it's not a disadvantage to be considered as a generalist or a specialist. What is important is that you know the kind of work that you're doing, and you find the right match with your personality, your talents, your innate ability to do something, and try to see which of these you fit. Most of the teams, whether you see it as a startup team or team in products in corporates, some of the best teams are the ones who have people of different wavelengths, maybe same wavelength but different skill sets, different abilities. So a specialist would really bring something, facts and knowledge about something that can help you make a decision. But you need a catalyst in the group as well. You need someone to understand the big picture. You need someone to connect the dots somewhere. Right. And so I would say it's very personal. If you are someone who are a go-getter, who has interest in one specific subject a lot and you want to pursue it, then you should consider being a specialist. My only suggestion would be that before deciding this, try a few things, like maybe do a couple of internships or jobs, depending on how early you are in your career, and try to see which of these roles fit you better. Because even in the future, when you're looking into a career, into something, people often look at you for who you are rather than the list of skills that you have.
And that's a valuable advice. I think they can get on to internships or jobs, whatever it is, and decide what is more suitable for them, their personality.
Can I add one or two cents? Okay, this generalist specialist has been a huge topic for decades together. There are two ends to the spectrum. Some people say that the specialization is for insects. It's not for human beings. There is another topic which talks about you need to know a lot of things. So what I have noticed is that there's a T-shaped person, there's a Z-shaped person. There are so many concepts out there, but my little brain could not understand all of it. So what I realized is, see, you have only so much time. All said and done, 36,500 days is all you have in your life if you are blessed with 100 years of living. In that 7,000 days is what you are spending on your career, which means that you have so little time, and specializing anything takes a lot of time. So an intelligent way is to go with a specialization, but having some maximizers around it. For example, if I can have an addition effect to my specialization versus a multiplication effect to my specialization. So I look for multipliers and not just additives. So if you are in design and you are in entrepreneurship, so use design, that is your specialization, but entrepreneurship is what allows you to make a huge impact. It gives you more intellectual, capacity to go and talk about things. So you're looking for maximizers. So try and have, in my opinion, at least like 2 or 3 maximizers around your specialization, and you are in a great place. Because, for example, when I look at design, this side there is technology, this side there is product management, that side there is data. So if I kind of look at maximization, I can choose probably product management and design because they both are defining the future. So let's go ahead into innovation, creativity. So choose your maximizers, which will give you multiplication effect. That has really helped in this choosing specialization versus generalization. I hope that helps.
Awesome. Going over to Aditi. Aditi, there are organizations where designers are put down compared to devs. This is something new for me also. How should one handle it is what Bhavani is saying. I always felt designers are valued more than developers.
Right. No. So I would say actually there are yes, Karthi, please.
No, is that true? Is what?
Oh yeah, that's definitely true. Actually, there are all the 3 kinds of organizations where designers are put down compared to devs, where devs are put down compared to designers, and then there are organizations that only value ideas, right? So, and the way to handle it is very simple, right? Prove your quality. That's the only way to help to make a case, right? When you're going into a meeting, make sure that you have a rationale for everything. And make sure that you also expect a rationale from everyone else, right? Don't just take feedback like, hey, I don't like that color. Please ask that, why do you not like that color? The conversations have to logically evolve and not just be based on personal biases. That's the only way to handle such a situation. And with time, once you start doing that, once people start understanding that, hey, whatever you're talking about, it has logic attached to it, people will start respecting you and will start respecting the output you're producing.
Awesome, very simple and sweet to understand. Going back to Karthi, this is from Meena. Everybody may not be good with visual ideas. What should one do in such cases?
So a lot of us, including me, I'm not a visual designer. I come from the cognitive science world. So I have had this syndrome saying that, oh my God, I'm not good with visuals. Unless until you want to be a Picasso, you can have that feeling. But as long as you can draw a circle, a square, a line, and a blob, you are set for visual ideas. So using the 6 principles that we discussed today and using these simple shapes, you will be able to tell any story that you want to. So what would empower you is how you're mixing, it's basically the remix of the principles along with these simple shapes. I think anybody can do it. If we are able to, if I can do it, I think you definitely can do it.
Right.
I mean, whoever asked the question, all of you can do it.
I think you're making it sound very simple. I think it needs a lot more practice, but still we can
It
do
is
it.
simple.
It is not as simple as what
It
Karthi
doesn't.
does with all her presentations, but if there's any trouble, contact her. She's available on LinkedIn. Moving to Nitya. Nitya, how did you overcome introversion? Interesting question.
Yes, very interesting. And to be very honest, I haven't overcome it yet. I still am an introvert. But I think what answers, like the insight that I have about this is that it was the time when I stopped making knowing being an introvert a thing for me. A lot of times I would put that as a defense mechanism. So when I was supposed to go meet people, attend conferences or whatever it was, even small things, I would always be like, what am I going to go and do there? I'll be introvert. I don't know who I can talk to. I don't know anyone there. And it started acting as a blocker for me. On the other hand, I came to understand that a lot of work that I do, not just work, even in personal life, you need to be able to understand, talk to people, and really build bonds with people. So the only thing that I did was actually try to know for sure that when I feel I'm telling myself you're introverted, you can't do this, challenge it, just go there, even if you don't know anybody. And it has always proven to be good for me. I mean, nerves are always there, but when you meet people, when you understand their story, when you meet someone else who's also doesn't know anyone, it always helps. And that's how I'm actually, I met all of you here. I made this bonds, etc. So definitely stop making it a blocker for yourself.
All right. Back to Shivrina. How do you take care of customer retention, especially in case of PregBuddy?
Okay. I think there's no, it's not like a one-stop solution. It's, I think, a learning curve. Customer retention is, one of the key challenges for any sort of company or any sort of a product that you're building, because your offering or your product that you're building would, be attractive for initial adopters. You would see some sort of a new kind of a market opening up for your product and new users coming across. But it becomes really difficult for any player to figure out that one aspect which actually retains your customer. So I think for us, what really helped was the fact that we tried to put like multiple touch points with our users. So if you see, PregBuddy initially was just catering to expecting women. So we knew that there is a journey which would come to an end where she would deliver the baby, and then there is a very difficult, maybe hardly any chance for us to engage and retain, our women users. So what we understood is that there are two set of problems. One is where you want them to become your supporters, promoters, and continue the funnel even if they don't need the product. So these are all maybe helpful for people who have infrequent use cases, right? So how do you keep them engaged during that phase? And the other is, how do you make sure they complete any sort of a process or a feature or a product or service that you have set out for them to do, right? So these are the two major parts. I'll come to the first part first. So when we just started as a content community platform. So we understood there are aha moments for our users where they feel that it made a small difference. Maybe it reduced the time in which they got the answers from our community, or reduced the clutter from the Google search they were getting. So we understood these nitty gritties on what are those aha moments for our users, where are they finding meaningful, and we removed everything else from our platform. We had a lot of things initially, like we wanted to do everything around women's health and everything around anything and everything that would help expecting women through our journey. But we understood those aha moments and we removed the clutter so that they could seamlessly go through this journey. And once you go through this journey, you would see they become like a more they kind of build trust with that platform because you were able to give them something. And this is how we did, from the content, the community, to connecting with the doctors. We understood where all they were finding gaps, where all we were fitting correctly, and we removed everything else. And that's where we found like a perfect channel which would continue the journey during the process of the service we are providing. Now coming to the additional part where they have availed the service. Now you have to wait for them to come back and kind of avail it again. For us, it was like they have to become pregnant again to come back to the circle, right? So for us, I think the one thing that helped in such a scenario was a sense of giving back. And the way we highlighted that sense of giving back, right? So in a peer-to-peer community, we had like mothers who were, we did it like a stage by stage. So we had like mothers who were maybe just 2 months ahead in the journey, who would help the mothers who are maybe in the early stages of their pregnancy, right? So we understood once you highlight this kind of sense of giving back, you were able to see that the women who have actually availed this service would again come back and do it. So we had like our users who have delivered already coming back to the platform and helping others out because they've known it. They can help you connect with the right doctor, tell you who is good, who is bad, who is for which service, or just help you with some of the home remedies that they have helped, right? So in a way where you can identify the sense of giving back, the users would contribute a bit more. So some of these things are very simple, like you don't have to generate all the content, you can rely on your users to do that, right? So that's one way. And the obvious other way is to expand your product. So once you know that there is a drop off, this is like a straightforward product answer. Once you know there is any sort of a drop off, you figure out a solution for that. So we expanded pre and post our pregnancy phases because we knew there are drop offs and an opportunity to increase our customer lifecycle journey.
Right.
I think
that's perfect. So coming back, this is question for me. When we start out with a new product that is not found in the market, how do we make strategies for its success and get users? I think according to me, as we are running out of time, we will be quickly answering all the rest of the questions as well. So how do you make strategies is like first understand who that user is and try identifying that user. Who is that user? This is the most important part of your journey. So when you are identifying the idea, you are identifying out of a problem, right? So identify what is the problem, who has that problem, and then you go after that users. That's about it. I think rest of the strategies, your roadmaps, everything will be defined on how massively the users are adapting your product. So even if it is an innovation, I think it's the same. So we'll have to see, and I think we'll have to test it out. That is one take. There's a lot more to it, which we can add if we are able to have more time once we are done with the questions. Hope that answered you, Chetal. This question is from Sami to Swati Kakarla. How do you choose a metric while moving forward in entrepreneurship, while validating your idea, and while testing out your MVP?
Okay, that's a great question. I think one of the easiest ways to do this is from day one or day zero, make sure that you're building a base where you're gathering that information that would allow you to choose metrics, right? So think like an accountant in the beginning. And another, because of the interest of time, another thing that I would advise is to keep yourselves away from vanity metrics, right? Do not count the number of social media likes you're getting or the number of followers. It's not going to amount to as much as what it would if you calculated how much it actually costs to acquire a customer and how long are they staying with you and how much should they actually add to your business and your product, right? So just make a base first to allow you to make that decision and then make the right decisions for the metrics after that.
Right. Cool. Moving on to Karti. Karti, won't images be open to audience's interpretation? Won't that make it more susceptible to discrepancies, is what Rachna is asking.
So we have only two modalities for processing. Our brain can take only two things, right? One is verbals, the other is visuals. Between verbals and visuals are much more easier. But now when we mix it with verbals, it becomes even more easier. So instead of talking just verbals, instead of talking just visuals, if we can mix the both in the right proportion so that we have this concept of cognitive overload. The idea is not to overload the brain. If you keep the brain like as if the communication went straight into the brain without zero frictions on the way, that is when you have landed your idea. And all communication aims at that only. So don't leave the audience to interpret it in just with images. Try and talk about it so that it makes sense. So if I just tweet and just a visual, probably I'm not saying it. If I just add one line to it, for example, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, and I add a visual, it makes an even more impact. So I would say that go for ways where there cannot be any discrepancies. I mean, between our verbal vocabulary and visual vocabulary, we understand verbal vocabulary only 7%. Visual is like 93%. Let's use it all.
Right. Cool. Nitya, how should design thinking be applied in ideation stage? How to measure whether we are going in the right direction? This is from Tejas.
Okay. So Tejas, I think ideation is a part of the design thinking process. Design thinking itself can be process, mindset, set of tools, whatever whoever wants to take it as. But I think how design thinking and ideation work hand in hand is because when you look at ideation, it is a stage where you're expected to think of things creatively, think of different ways to do something, think of a way to solve a problem. So in order to actually come to that ideation stage, you either need to have experienced a problem and then validated it, or you need some kind of stimuli to actually take you there. And that's how the design thinking process, when you start in the beginning, when you start with discovering, right? You're filled with a lot of different kind of inputs. So some of them could be triggers, some of them could be inspiration, some of it could be even a conversation that you had with someone talking about something. And these are all triggers that are somewhere in your mind. And design thinking, basically the framework lets you somehow put it together when it's needed in the ideation stage. So at that moment when there's either you do it as a sprint, or even if you're just thinking out aloud in dialogue, there is a time when you need to come up with it. This process actually helps you connect those triggers and come to good ideas. The second part of the question, in my mind, is more important. So ideas are really easy to come by. Sometimes people, of course, feel it's difficult, and that is because maybe you're not at the right place where you have those triggers already. But going forward with an idea, how you're going to measure whether this is the one that's best, for me lies in iteration. So before you really choose a direction, the iterative one, when you're trying to do what we spoke about earlier and what the other ladies spoke today as well, as about the minimum viable product or minimum viable experience. You have to test out whether agrees with your idea, whether there are users. And you have to do it in the most minimal way. Talk to people, like you mentioned, it can be quite inexpensive, like learning from WhatsApp groups, etc. So before picking a direction, make sure you have a couple of ideas, make sure you have probably one that you think is the one, and then try to see what would disprove that idea. And if you're able to prove that, that would be the metric for you to actually know whether you can proceed in that direction.
Thanks, Nitya. That's a very helpful answer. Back to Shivrana. This is the last question. What are the pros and cons of scaling a product using fundraising and scaling a product with profitability of the product? This is from Abhilash.
Okay. I think, Abhilash, having a sustainable profitability is a bliss. I don't think there is any other way you should run it, but reaching that stage is not easy. So definitely, I mean, when you're looking at fundraising versus building a profitable product, you should always be looking at building a profitable product. So what happens is when you are, when you have like a multiple source of getting your money for your resources, that always helps. When you are solely dependent on fundraising, what happens is you're really dependent, and in a very blunt term, you're dependent on someone else's money to come in for you to run the show, right? Versus when you're looking at profitability, it's pretty much simple, that it's up to you to figure out the consistency of that profitability. So you would do more iterations. It's more in your control when you look at profitability of a product, right? So reaching that stage should be a kind of a parallel goal for any product building or any scaling process that you're looking at. It's not easy as it sounds. It's very difficult to achieve a profitable stage, especially when you want to mix your scaling, you want to mix your user expansion into picture. Profitability just goes out of the entire the kind of analysis that you're doing, right? So I think there are pros and cons to both of it, but I would always be towards building more profitable product than solely focus or running your entire fuel on fundraising. That's like my take.
If I could just add on to that.
Go on, Swati.
All right, thank you. So I think this makes a lot of sense, just like how Shivrana was just talking about. We've made a very conscious decision to stay bootstrapped and not just take external funding. And I think it ties in a lot to how you are as an entrepreneur, right? When you accept external funds, right, you have got two problems to solve. One is to sustain your company, and the other is to how do you use that money in order to get what you want out of your business, right? And that's a separate skill. If you're a seasoned entrepreneur who knows what you need to prod to get what you need, that would be the best route to take. But if this is the first time for you, I would say bet on yourself, because change only happens at the precipice. And the more times you are on that edge, the better it is for your company. It's the school of, hard thought.
Right. So I would love to add that, understand more deeper in pros and cons. I think there are lots of pros and cons in both the things. And it would be a blessing to get a fundraise, right? That would happen only if you have already executed something like that before. We can't really raise funds without showing anything. So I'm sure we have a lot more expertise in it. And I would like to thank each and every speaker for today, coming in and sharing your knowledge and learnings with all the community. And I know most of you, I think most of us are organizers, most of us are part of Google Developer Experts and Google Developer Launchpad. They're like, this is one such amazing community who believes in giving back to the community. And I'm sure all of us are ready to help you out. If you have anything, directly reach out to the speakers. Thank you so much once again to all the audience and the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.